So Hari Om and salutations to you and all. We saw in the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhamsa that he used to get into very different bhav when he used to worship Mother Kali, and he had also found a place just near the temple called Panchavati, and he used to go and spend a lot of time there in meditation. Whole night he used to be there, longing for the one union with the mother, with the vision of the mother. And he also had the vision of the mother in the Dakshineshwar temple, but his yearning kept increasing because the vision would come and go, come and go. After some time, he also saw the mother, just like we see each of us, and still he kept praying to the mother. At one point, there was this intellectual person who came there. His name was Hardhari. And in that intellectual debate, argument, he said that the Supreme is incomprehensible. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he was not very formally educated in any of these philosophies. So he felt that what is he going through? Is he going through something genuinely, or is it madness? Because people also could not understand him. There was no role model for him. So he used to pray that, uh, have you cheated me, O mother? Because just I'm a fool. And his tears used to roll down his eyes, and sometimes he would feel a burning sensation in his body. He had become very oblivious of his uh, cares and the needs for the body. So people thought that it is better that he can get married. He should be married. He went to his home, to his mother, and the mother took good care of him. His body again regained good health, and he is 23 years of age at this time. And nearby his village, Kamarpukur, is a village called Jairambati. There was this girl, Shardamani, only 5 years old. But in her mind, she was very pure, and she would always pray to the Lord that, "Oh Lord, make my life extremely pure." She would say that the moon also has a lot of dark spots, but my character should be spotless. So bless me with more and more purity. And so it is that she was married to Ramakrishna Paramhamsa. Ramakrishna did not have the mind to lead a household life, but on the insistence of the mother, his mother, he agreed. The marriage was done. Sharda Manish stayed at her own village, and much later she comes to Dakshineshwar. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, after the marriage got over, he stayed for a year and a half in totality in Kamarpukur, and then he went to Dakshineshwar. Now, the moment he went to Dakshineshwar and again he entered the Kali temple, all those feelings and the burning sensation and the longing, they all returned to him. Again, sleeplessness, indifference to the body, he came into that bhav again. So he started doing many other sadhanas. So some of the sadhanas given here are this. He would have some rupee, a coin in his one hand, and he would have mud in the other hand. And he would compare both these. And he would say both these are inert things, both these have a utility value which is different, but at the end of the day, they are just things. And he would do this. This in Vedanta we call this as Vivek. Jad Chetan Vivek. What is inert, what is sentient. because this body actually is inert, but we are thinking it is sentient, functioning on its own, not realizing there is a consciousness which is manifesting in and through this body. So for him, lump of clay and gold, it was same. In the Gita, this expression comes, Samaloštashma Kanchanaha, one for whom the stone, a lump of clay, and gold, all are equal, meaning who doesn't get carried away by the excitement of having some wealth or power or position or any such thing. Include even beauty, handsomeness, nothing. None of that would affect that person. So this was one thing he used to do. And he would throw both of them in the Ganges. He would say, these are both not helpful to me in my spiritual pursuit. Women he always regarded as the manifestation of the Divine Mother that we saw earlier also. And even in dream, he did not have impulsiveness of lust. His mind was already that pure. And to remove the distinctions of community, of caste, of lower, higher, what he used to do is he would clean a pariah's house with his long neglected hair. So the people would not even go there, but he would go and he would clean their house. They are the people who clean the houses of others, but he would go and clean their house. To remove this division of higher, lower, superior, inferior, all this. And then, of course, he would continue to do his meditation in that Panchavati on the form of the mother. Then we find that if you remember, there was this sannyasi who had manifested out of him. There was a red black person who manifested, and there was a sannyasi who came out and who destroyed his red black person. That same sannyasi would come out now and then and guide him what sadhanas to do next. Sometimes if the mind would have these type of thoughts that, am I even following the right practice, or is it all a delusion of my mind? Is the mother playing with me? Then that sannyasi would as though point out the trishul in a very angry mood and say, concentrate on God. Why are you thinking of any of these things? So he would go through these phases in his sadhana. Meanwhile, what happened in 1861, Rani Rasmani, who had built this Dakshineshwar temple, she passed away. And Mathur Babu, he took charge of that whole place. And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say that Mathur Babu was one of the 5 suppliers that the mother sent to take care of him. What we learn in the Gita, that the devotee who continuously thinks of the Lord does not have to worry about the maintenance of oneself or to protect what one has. Literally, that is true. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa didn't have to worry about it at all. Mathur Babu provided whatever he needed. So in Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's life, we find many of these spiritual truths which are written in the books, in the Shastra. They just manifest as it is. He is an embodiment of many of these kind of uh, declarations of the scriptures coming true. Now, at this time, in 1861, there is a Brahmin sannyasini who comes there. And she is very adept in Tantra as well as in the Vaishnav Bhakti tradition. She was about little over 50 years of age, but very resplendent because of the sadhana tapasya that she has done. And orange clothes she wears, just a few books, and two pairs of clothes. Those are her only possessions. Now, if you remember last time we spoke about it, that in Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's life, the right teacher comes in at the right time. The Divine Lord, the Divine Mother, they ensure that this happens in his life. So this Brahmani, she walks in. Brahmani, she walks in. And when Ramakrishna meets her, he sees everyone as a mother and she is a sannyasini, and a spiritual seeker would know immediately someone who is a sadhak, who is an advanced seeker, or who is a master, because one is walking the path oneself. So he understood that she is a very, she is not like any ordinary person. She is an accomplished seeker. So he would ask her that what am I going through? Am I mad? Is the mother playing with me? Why am I going through this? Suddenly there are tears. Suddenly there is so much heat in the body. Suddenly I am sweating. Suddenly I am laughing. What is all this happening to me? And she gave such a beautiful reply. See what she said. My son, everyone in this world is mad. Some are mad for money. Some are mad for creature comfort. Some are for name and fame. But you are mad for God. And she assured him that what he is going through is one of the rarest states, which is called Mahabhav. When the devotee comes into that state, there are some 19 expressions of Mahabhav. When the devotee comes into that state, the 19 physical expressions would happen. Some of them are these: shedding tears, tremors of the body, horripilation, perspiration, burning sensation. And these would happen without one's control and without even situations or circumstances leading to it. Like it will not be very hot, but the bhakta will perspire like anything. Why? Because when one comes into that Mahabhav state, one has gone beyond the physical realm. One is in a different mood of ecstasy, and different things manifest at that time. So it is said Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Radhaji, these are the only two people who have experienced this Mahabhav Avastha. And after them, it is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, where all the 19 have manifested. See, there are other devotees in whom a few will manifest. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Radhaji are such devotees in whom all the 19 manifest. Bhakti Shastras speak about this Mahabhav Avastha. Here, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, she explains to him that this is the Avastha, this is what has happened, and you are going through this, in which the seeker has no control. It is the Divine Lord who takes charge. And various reasons are there why one goes in through certain different experiences. It also helps to drop away this whole idea I am this body. So she explains to him. So very soon there was a bond that they developed where he looks upon her as a mother and she looks upon him as a Bal Gopal, baby Krishna. As they spent some time, she was sharing her experiences and sadhana and how he should do what, if he has some doubts, etc. Very soon she realized that he is not an ordinary person, and she proclaimed him to be an avatar, an incarnation of the Lord. And she started saying that openly to everyone that he is not an ordinary person, he is an avatar of the Supreme. Now, anybody saying that somebody is an avatar, people are not going to believe. And especially when the person is not doing any miracles. Ramakrishna was not doing any miracles. It's very strange. People, if somebody does miracles, they think this person is one realized person or some avatar or some great yogi, Siddha Purusha. But actually, miracles are not any sign of realization. They are powers of the mind. Realization is beyond mind. So anyway, so people were wondering, what is she saying? How can he be avatar? When they see, what is she saying? When people are calling him mad, she is saying he's an avatar. Because in her understanding, what he is going through is rarest. Like she said, Radhaji and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu alone have gone through this. So she proclaims him as an avatar. And there are two great scholars of that time. She organizes a debate with them, where she would debate with them, not Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So one person is called Vaishnav Charan. He was the leader of the Vaishnav society, and the other person is called Gauri. So Vaishnav Charan comes first, and they have this discussion, and the Brahmani, she quotes many scriptures. She explains, this is the bhav, this is the scripture, this is what is written, this is what he is experiencing. And in and through this discussion that is happening, Ramakrishna is sitting there very quietly. And he is very childlike, very innocent, absolutely guileless. So he is sitting there. And he would say sometimes, that, I feel this too sometimes. What she's saying now, this is what I feel also. Otherwise, sometimes he's smiling, he's just listening quietly. At the end of that debate, Vaishnav Charan got up and he said, what you are saying is true. And he accepted that Ramakrishna is an avatar. And he said that Ramakrishna had undoubtedly experienced Mahabhav and that this was the certain sign of the rare manifestation of God. You know what was Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's response to that? He says, he told Mathur Babu, just fancy he too says so. Well, I am glad to learn that after all, it is not a disease. Grounded in humility. He doesn't take it, he doesn't go into his head, I am an avatar. Because if that happens, then that person is not an avatar. It will not happen like that. The person who is an avatar would never be boast about it arrogantly and say, I am an avatar and people should consider me. That would never happen. Bhagwan himself never did that. None of the great saints and sages themselves have done it. So, really, who is an avatar will not even explain all that. So, here Ramakrishna also very humbly he says, and it's not a false humility, his nature is that. Then comes Gauri, Pandit Gauri. They have another meeting. And finally, Gauri also accepts and he hears what Vaishnav Charan has said. And Gauri's response is that all that he said about you? Gauri goes one step ahead. He says, I am fully convinced that you are that mine of spiritual power, only a small fraction of which descends on the earth from time to time in the form of an incarnation. See, the objective of saying all this is not to say that Ramakrishna was an incarnation and so it was easy for him, because that is how we respond many times. When somebody is called an avatar, then we feel, what was so difficult for him? Then he's anyway avatar. But we are human beings. For us, it is very difficult to even, follow a little bit of the life of Ramakrishna. The objective of this is not to say that he was an avatar and so he is something completely different from us, and that what he followed in his life we can never follow. No. The objective of saying this is only that one can learn and have more Shraddha, because Ramakrishna himself was like this. So when he kept on, when they declared him as an avatar, Ramakrishna said, well, It is you who say so, but believe me, I know nothing about it. This is his response to Gauri, Pandit Gauri. Both the responses, you see how grounded they are. Many years later, some other two disciples of his also tried to proclaim him as an avatar. And he dismisses their argument, saying, one of you is an actor, one of you is a physician. What do you know also about an avatar? Don't bring this into discussion anymore. And then he says something very beautiful. He said, years ago, Pandits like Gauri and Vaishnav Charan also declared me to be an avatar. They were great scholars and they knew what they were saying based on the Shastra, but that did not make me change my mind. Friend, the more I live, the more I learn. This is his humility. And really, that is the what I said now, that what Shastra says, it is manifest in his life. In the scripture, it is said, Vidya dadati vinayam. When there is knowledge, true knowledge is that which will bring humility, not arrogance, not cut oneself from the rest. One will start identifying with the totality. So this was one phase. Now he accepted the Brahmani as her guru with the consent of the Divine Mother. He accepted her as a formal guru. Now this is another point to understand, that he looked upon her as a mother, she looked upon him as a child, and they used to exchange spiritual thoughts and sadhanas. But now he looks upon her formally as a guru, and she initiates him into the knowledge that she has. So first she initiates him into Tantra. Now I am not a master in Tantra, nor have I studied that philosophy deeply. From whatever little I know is what I'm just going to share here. Tantra also believes, like in Vedanta, Tantra also believes that Chit Shakti, Chaitanya Shakti, is the supreme. And that Chit Shakti is one with Sat and Anand. And hence, it is that Chaitanya Shakti alone which is worshipped in Tantra as the mother, as the divine mother. And this Chaitanya Shakti, essentially the individual or the sadhak is one with this Chaitanya Shakti. So how in Advaita Vedanta we say that there is the Jiva and Ishvara are one, in Tantra also the objective is to realize the oneness, absolute oneness. In Bhakti also it is the same. Bhakta and Bhagwan are one. But the paths of each of them are different. But the culmination is in absolute oneness. And so we find here that Tantra takes a path where the human attachment to the body, to sense enjoyments, to pleasures, etc., it gives methods to help us to overcome these, which are sometimes appearing very weird. So one may go and live in a cremation ground. There may be some skulls which will be there. One may sit on a dead body. The idea is that go get out of body identification. Degeneration of Tantra into many other things have also happened today. I'm not going to get into those aspects. But the point to understand here is that Tantra as a pure science and as the sadhanas of Tantra, the objective is only to realize the absolute oneness. And so it is said here that mystical rites are prescribed by which slowly the sense objects become spiritualized and the sense attraction is transformed into love of God. And in this Tantra, external renunciation is not required. In Vedant, we may see that external renunciation also is a very, very important step. No doubt, internal renunciation is most important, but external also plays a big step. And so, from the traditional standpoint, that is one big difference between Tantra and Vedanta. In the Tantra, there is no need of external renunciation. The objective of Tantra also is to sublimate Bhoga. But unfortunately, today people are using Tantra for increasing Bhoga Vritti and to behave in a licentious way in the name of I am a follower of Tantra. Tantra is not that actual. Tantra is a lot of rules, regulation, discipline. So this was the practice, the transformation of the lower into the higher are the practices of Tantra. And one of the very important aspects of Tantra is to regard the Lord as the Divine Mother, and every aspect of the Divine Mother is worshipped as the incarnation of divinity itself. And so it is that uh, some of these rites, rituals of Tantra are esoteric, mystical, difficult to understand, and unless there is a proper guru who can initiate, one should not venture into it just by anybody who is just a casual practitioner of Tantra. That is very dangerous, because what has to transform lust into love, anger into compassion, bhoga vritti into yoga vritti, it will go completely opposite. Lust, anger, greed, everything can increase and one can fall in a terrible way. Instead of going beyond body identification, one increases body identification quite deeply. So a guru is a very important aspect in Tantra also. And in Tantra, Shakti is considered supreme as Mother Kali, any form of the mother actually. And there she is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of this whole universe. Shiva is passive, is just the presence. Like what we say in Vedanta, Brahman is the presence. Maya is the power of this Brahman. Brahman by itself doesn't do anything. But invoking the power of Maya, that Brahman then becomes creator, sustainer, and destroyer. Same way in Tantra. Just the terms are different, Shiva and Shakti. And so here, Kali is the creative power and the central focus and the discipline in the Tantra. So how does the aspirant meditate? The aspirant meditates that the absolute truth is impersonal, one, infinite consciousness, which has become two. With reference to creation, it has become the creator, and it has produced the whole creation, including all the creatures. And so that very form is now manifest in front of me in this personal form as Mother Kali. That supreme impersonal God is who has become the creator is now in front of me as this Mother Kali. And with this bhav, one worships the Divine Mother, and the creation being her expression, one worships the whole creation also as divine. So many of these we find parallels in Bhakti, Advaita Vedanta, they are same. The vision is the same, only the method is different. And so here it is that 64 principal Tantra books are there. The disciplines of these Tantra books, Ramakrishna was initiated into. And one very stunning fact is, any sadhana that he took up, he did not need more than 3 days to reach the pinnacle of that sadhana. Such a mind he had. One sadhana to, like even in Bhakti, if we say that japa is one sadhana, puja is one sadhana, maun is one sadhana, like that there are so many sadhanas. Bhajan, Kirtan, Shravan. Like that in Tantra, there are many sadhanas. But every sadhana, the peak of that sadhana he could reach in 3 days' time. And he would get into samadhi avastha through these sadhanas, where his mind would revel in ecstasy. He lost all the awareness of the world outside. Evil stopped existing for him. Lust and passion and greed and jealousy, those impurities ceased for him. And what he would see, that whole world and everything in it appeared as a Leela, the sport of Shiva and Shakti. This was his Tantra sadhana. So he would see this entire world as a play of the Divine Mother. And in these sadhanas only, he also came to hear the primordial sound, what we call as Om. See, one is that we chant Om and we meditate on the sound of Om to quieten the mind. But the other is where one's mind has become so silent and completely quiet that the primordial sound of the universe is called Anahad Nad, which is a sound produced without any friction. It is a natural sound. The meditator hears that sound without oneself doing anything. That Omkar Dhvani, the sound of Om, that is actually called Sagun Nirakar. Only the sound symbol, there is no form. So he heard in that quiet moments in Samadhi, sometimes he would hear just the sound of Om. And he also acquired Ashta Siddhis, what we have in Hanuman Chalisa. Ashta Siddhi Navanidhi Ke Data Asavara Dina Janaki Mata. Janaki Mata gave Hanumanji the boon that may you have Ashta Siddhis and Navanidhi, but he already had that before. How he came to the Lanka by crossing the ocean itself shows that he had a power to become small, to become big, to become light, to become heavy. So he already had that. So Janaki ji said, you become the giver of that. So whoever worships Hanumanji can be blessed by Hanumanji with the Ashta Siddhis. But Hanumanji was not very happy with any of that. He was very sad. Then Mother Sita said, राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा. You have the medicine of the name of the Lord. Ram Rasayana tumhare pasa. And may you remain ever the servant of the Lord. And he was so thrilled. So that Ashta Siddhis, Ramakrishna had the Ashta Siddhis. See, to get one Siddhi also takes so much time. There's one incident which comes where there is one yogi who comes to meet Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So Ramakrishna says, what have you achieved? So he says, I have done 20 years of sadhana and today I can walk on water. And Ramakrishna said, what a fool you are. You wasted 20 years of your life. I can give 2 annas and cross this with the help of a boatman. Why do you need this type of a siddhi? Though he had that siddhi, but his point was that the higher states of oneness with the Lord, bhakti, surrender of the ego, those are much more powerful and much more, that's the purpose of our coming here, not to waste in siddhis. So it is not that he did not have and he was just making fun. Somebody who doesn't have it cannot make fun of a yogi who has spent 20 years, because that also requires a lot of control of the mind. But somebody who has already experienced the higher state, who has those siddhis, that person can lift the yogi to higher state, because this master who is in that higher state can lift the yogi into that state. And so here it is that Ramakrishna had those siddhis, but he never gave importance to them. And he would say that they are of no value whatsoever to the spirit. So he never paid attention, nor did he display any of these siddhis. Small little power we get, we want to display that power and become popular. But Ramakrishna had Ashtasiddhis. He was one of the incarnations of Bhagavan. And he is one of the rare people who is expressing Mahabhav, but the mind is so pure, it doesn't demand any publicity, popularity, nothing. And it is at this time when he is doing Tantra Sadhana also that he experienced the Kundalini Shakti. Literally, that Kundalini, when we say it is at the base of the spine, like a coiled serpent, and that energy rises through the seven chakras. Finally, it comes and meets the seventh one, Sahasrara. Ramakrishna literally felt the presence, experienced this state that how this Kundalini rises, and at each step when it rises, what is the bhav that one goes through, what type of lotuses are there, which bloom, what type of attitudes come into the mind, what type of siddhis come into the mind. Like one of the examples is when it comes here, the Vishuddhi Chakra. That person, that yogi, can understand the language of all the creatures in the world. Whoever it is, whichever creature it may be, lion, tiger, dog, cat, they can communicate with all the creatures because that power has come. That is the speciality of the Vishuddhi Chakra. So he experienced this also through this Tantra sadhana. He experienced this. It is at this time when this Kundalini Shakti, etc., which was rising, it was also revealed to him that there would be many devotees who would come in future to seek his guidance. Now, please remember what is his age. 1861, this Brahmani comes there. He is born in 1836, 25 years of age. That's all. In 25 years, which is half his lifespan. By 50 years, he took Samadhi. In 25 years of his life, he already experienced the culmination, the peaks of Tantra, of this yoga also, Kundalini yoga also. Bhakti already had the vision of the mother. And even after all this, there is still, you see, his life, there is so much more that comes in terms of spiritual experiences. Somebody would say any one of this happens to us is enough in life. Ramakrishna's life, it doesn't stop. So after this Tantra sadhana, when it is completed, and remember that the Brahmani is with him only for 3 years, 1861 to 1864. Only 3 years she is there with him. Then another teacher comes in his life. So in 3 years' time, he is got initiated into Tantra sadhana also, and into, now after Tantra sadhana is over, she initiates him into the Vaishnav Sampradaya. Already he has had darshan of Mother Kali as a personal form which he worshipped as his Ishtadevata. But he formally gets initiated into the Vaishnav, the path, Vaishnav Dharma, where bhakti is most crucial. Bhakti and Sharanagati, they are the most crucial aspect in the Vaishnav sadhana. And one has so much of devotion and love for the Lord, and Lord is real. Lord is not a murti. And one of the importances of this bhakti sadhana is that one considers Bhagavan not just as a form, but as a living entity. So one wakes up the Lord, feeds the Lord, gives birth to the Lord. The whole thing will happen. That is one part of Vaishnava sadhana. There are other ways of Vaishnava sadhana which are what we learn from Bhagavatam and other books also, where one remembers the Lord, Kirtan, Shravan, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam. Those are the other aspects. Now one may say, why did he have to get initiated into this? We will see beautiful points are there in this now. In this sadhana, one surrenders to the Lord, one seeks the grace of the Lord, and one depends only on the Lord. The bhakta doesn't demand even mukti. Bhakta says, I am here to love the Lord, If the Lord wants, the Lord will give mukti. If the Lord doesn't want, he will not give mukti. So bhav and bhakti are most important in this. So in this also there is tamasic, rajasic, sattvic type of bhakti. Tamasic bhakti is now and then one does it without any proper, you know, procedure, bhavana, and one combines that. One's character is not purified. So there is greed, lust, jealousy, anger, attachment, all that also, and with that there is some bhakti now and then which one is doing. Shastra calls that as tamasi bhakti, where one is not preparing oneself through the day through pure conduct, by following right values, by living in self control, by ensuring that the heart becomes full of love, compassion, kindness. If one is not following that up through the day, just remembering the name of the Lord, the benefit will be little. So Shastra calls it as Tamasi Bhakti. Then Rajasi Bhakti is the one where one prays to the Lord when one wants some freedom from some difficult situation, circumstances, or fulfillment of some desires, or for some name, fame, power, where Bhagwan becomes the means and the thing becomes the goal. What one wants from Bhagwan, that becomes the goal. Then comes Sattvic Bhakti, where one prays to the Lord because there is love for the Lord and one wants more knowledge, one seeks more grace, one wants to serve the Lord more and more. So the idea is that one should evolve in bhakti. Beyond these three is the supreme bhakti. Beyond the sattvic level of bhakti also is the highest form of bhakti where bhakta, as I said, is not bothered even about moksha. One loves the Lord only for the Lord. Nothing one wants from the Lord. Nothing. That is the state where bhakta becomes one with Bhagwan also. That Bhagwan only makes that bhakta one, not because bhakta wants that. Bhakta drops that desire to become one with the Lord also. In sattvic state, that desire will be there, but in the state beyond sattva, that desire also is not there. Complete surrender. Jahi vidhi rakhe Ram, tahi vidhi rahiye. So that is called parabhakti. Vaidhi bhakti and parabhakti. Vaidhi bhakti is the bhakti which one follows by following the vidhi as per the shastra, and especially it is the sattvic form of bhakti. Rajasic, tamasic are not condemned, but that is a step one shows how to evolve in bhakti. Ramakrishna Paramhamsa here, what we find in his situation, he has had darshan of Bhagwan already. So one bhav he has experienced, where he is a child and the Supreme Lord is the mother, as Mother Kali. He asks to be initiated into Vaishnav Sampradaya, in that Vaishnav Paddhati and Siddhanta, because he wants to experience bhakti through other bhavanas, which is what he takes up. So we saw two practices here already done. One is mother and child. The other is he had done the upasana that he is Hanumanji. So as a sevak towards the master. Those two he has practiced. Now he wants to practice the others. The Sakha Bhav, the Premi Bhav, the parent Bhav, the husband Bhav. He wants to experience all this. And so this Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, all this he wants to experience. So she initiates him into this bhakti sadhana and he starts worshipping. What does he worship? You will see now, one by one it will come. A few will come. So 1864, this monk comes there. One monk comes, who is a Vaishnav monk, who is a Jatadhari, and who is a worshipper of Ram Lala. So he carries the Ram Lala with him everywhere. He is worshipping Bhagwan in the baby form. And for him, this is not a murti. For him, it is Bhagwan himself, and he has experienced the darshan of the Lord just like many other great devotees. So for him, Bhagwan is alive, and Bhagwan responds also. So he had come to that state. He had come to Dakshineshwar now. That great monk had come to Dakshineshwar. The name is not mentioned here. It is just that he is called Jatadhari. Vaishnav monk who is Jatadhari. That is what is written. And the bhavna that he had, this monk had, is of Mother Kausalya towards the Balram. So Ramakrishna Paramsa, he saw that this is the bhav and see how they are relating. And he became Ram, he developed a bond with Ram Lala. So for him now, his already mind is very pure. Already he had had darshan of Mother Kali. So for him, Ram Lala also came alive. So he built a bond with Ram Lala. And he had the Vatsalya Bhavna. And so he would say that, um, how this Ram Lala, the baby Ram, would dance gracefully before him, jump on his back, insist on being taken, like a child would say, take me in the arms. So like that, Bhagwan would lift his hands and tell Ramakrishna that lift me up now. And he would lift up the Lord, run into the fields, pluck flowers from the bushes, play pranks like a naughty boy. Now, when we read many of these things, we start wondering, what is all this? But these are real. These happen, and we are talking about the saint of the 19th century. This is not a Puranic story. This is a historical episode. And these great devotees and saints, they all have experienced. Ramakrishna, not only Ramakrishna, we are seeing Brahmani also has experienced, this Jatadhari saint also has experienced. There are many of such saints who have experienced this. Just that bhavana and the bhakti when we have in our mind, then we also will be able to experience. So one day what happened, the Jatadhari told him that now let Ramlala be with you. I have to go, and Ramlala has told me that you have to go to the next stage of your sadhana. You leave this form of mine. And so he said that Ramlala has fulfilled my innermost prayer, and Ramlala has told me that there is no more any need for a formal worship. And so Jatadhari left Ramlala with Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and he went. Now Ramakrishna he has already developed a bond with Ramlala. So it is said here that he was blessed with the vision of Ramchandraji in his full form, not just as a baby Ram, but as a Ram who is a Kodanda Ram, who has his bow and arrow and who was the ruler of Ayodhya, that form of the Lord, the King Ram. So he says that he realized the Ram of Ramayana. And what did he realize? It is that Ram of Ramayana who is pervading this whole universe, who is the creator and who is even beyond the creator. What he experienced with Mother Kali, now he experiences with Bhagwan Ram. And it is said that while he was worshipping the Lord and having this Vatsalya Bhav, he regarded himself as a woman. His speech, his gestures, everything changed because the Vatsalya Bhav took over him. And so, even the ladies in the house of Mathur Babu used to consider Ramakrishna as one of their own. Because he did not have that body consciousness that I am a man, etc. When his mind is fully soaked in Vatsalya Bhav, he lived like this, that I am the mother and Ram Lala is my child. And very strange thing here is, it's not strange, but interesting it is that at this time, what was his relationship with Mother Kali? So it is said he worshipped the Divine Mother as a companion or friend. So she is Kaushalya. I mean, he is having the bhav that I am the mother, like Kaushalya. And Kali is my friend. See, this is his bhav, how he changed. Then, so he realized this aspect. Then comes the next phase of his life, where he attempts the darshan of Shri Krishna Bhagwan. Now again somebody says, but are they not one? Vision of Kali also he had, Ramji also he had, now we want darshan of Lord Krishna. They are one, there is no doubt. From absolute standpoint, they are one. But in the relative realm, each of them have a special form also. The essence of all of them is one, there is no doubt in that. And whoever realizes the essence, the experience of the essence also will be one. Like we said, Kali Mata's form, when he had the darshan, he saw that she alone pervades the whole universe. Same thing he experienced when Ramji's darshan he had. That Ram is the creator, Ram is the sustainer, Ram is the destroyer. And Ram is beyond these three, he is a Brahman. So ultimate experience through any of these is the same. But form has its own beauty. And forms are different forms. There's no doubt in that. And so each form's leelas also are different, bhav is also different. There's a richness. Like Ramakrishna himself used to give that example that rice is same, but sometimes you eat curd rice, sometimes you eat lemon rice, sometimes you eat tamarind rice. The taste of each of them is different. Rice is the same way. Forms are different. And he wanted to have darshan of Shri Krishna now. So he took up the bhav that I am a gopi of Vrindavan. And his heart was filled with longing for Shri Krishna. And at this stage, what happened is he asked Mathur Babu to give him the clothes of a gopi also. So he used to literally dress up like a gopi. Sometimes we see even today there are devotees who come into the gopi bhav, not just in the mind gopi bhav, but physically also they consider themselves as the gopi and they will dress like a woman. The man will dress like a woman. Because the understanding is there is only one Purusha, that is the Supreme Lord who is Krishna. The rest of them all are gopis only. They are Prakriti. Purusha is only one. And so he used to dress up like a woman also. And in this longing for the darshan of Shri Krishna, again same thing, same bhav he used to have, that he forgot food, sleep, all the basic worldly necessities, pursuits also he forgot. And Bhagwan also started playing with him. So it is said that how Bhagwan used to play with the gopis, he started playing with him. So he would tease him, taunt him, now and then reveal himself, again go and hide. And when this was happening, because of that longing, Ramakrishna's old symptoms again came back. So again he used to have burning sensation. Again there would be the oozing of blood through the pores, the loosening of the joints, and sometimes the physiological functions as though they have stopped. And so it is said that to have darshan of the Lord Shri Krishna, one has to propitiate Radhaji. Radha darshan bina na koi, Radha Shakti bina na koi Shyamal darshan paave. So he started invoking Radhaji. And what is said here, that in a short time he had the vision of Radhaji, and he saw that Radhaji has as though merged with him. And later on he said that it is impossible to describe the heavenly beauty and the sweetness of Radhaji. Her very appearance showed that she had completely forgotten herself in her passionate attachment to Sri Krishna. Her complexion was light yellow. Now, when he became one with Radhaji, all those 19 expressions of Mahabhav, all of them started manifesting in his life. All. And hence, here he says that the manifestation in the same individual of the 19 different kinds of emotions for God is what is called as Mahabhav. An ordinary person may take a lifetime to experience one such bhav, but Ramakrishna expressed all the 19. And he himself said it. In this body, there has been a complete manifestation of all 19. And in this state, he had darshan of Sri Krishna also. So Bhagwan gave him darshan, and ultimately the same state he experienced again, that he saw Krishna in himself and in the whole universe. And this was the culmination of his Vaishnav sadhana. At this time, one day when he was listening to the Bhagavatam, what he saw is the form of the Lord manifested, and from the feet of the Lord, as though there is a lot of light which is emanating, and there is a rope which appears from there. From the feet of the Lord, it goes to the Bhagavatam. From Bhagavatam, it comes to him, and it goes back to the feet of the Lord. All the three get tied as though by this one rope. And later on, Ramakrishna said that that was an experience which made me understand that Bhagavan, Bhagavat, and Bhakta are one. See, when we read Bhagavatam, the meaning of the word Bhagavatam also is that which reveals the oneness of Bhakta, Bhagavan, and Bhagavat. We read these lines. Here is Ramakrishna who is literally experiencing this in a mystic vision, where he says that Bhagavan, Bhakta, and Bhagavat are one. So this was the culmination of his sadhana in terms of the Vaishnav sadhana, the Tantra sadhana. Now comes in his life the highest form of philosophy, which is Vedanta. And this Divine Mother brings this teacher to him again. The Divine Mother doesn't want him to stop still, because he is in the realm of relativity yet. The creation is still there, Bhagwan is there, Bhagwan alone appears as this whole creation. Beyond this relative realm is the realm of the transcendental absolute truth. That is Brahman. And all these various forms, etc., are appearances of that Brahman alone. But in that state of Brahman, there is no duality. There is no creator, there is no creation, there is no creature. So the Divine Mother wanted him to experience that state, the state of absolute oneness, through Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Till now, what he is going through is what we call as Savikalpa Samadhi, where the devotee loses one's ego and the mind temporarily is completely absorbed in the worship of the form or whatever support one has taken. One is completely absorbed in that. That is called Savikalpa. There is only one thought of the divine. The ego is dormant. But in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, all that also goes away. There is no experiencer, experienced, experiencing. These three go away. In Savikalpa, there is an experience. The experiencer has become dormant. The experienced is there. But in Nirvikalpa, all the three go away. So to initiate him into this Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Totapuri Maharaj walks into his life by the end of 1864. In the beginning, around beginning of 1864 is when the Jatadhari has come. By the end of 1864, Totapuri Maharaj comes in. That we will take up in our next class. This life of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa may appear very subtle, or certain things may be incomprehensible also, and we may not find directly something that immediately we can apply in our life. But knowing his life, one thing is sure: what our Shastra says is true. There is no two ways about that, because there are people who have realized that. It is not somebody who has just written it out of theory. Ramakrishna has not even studied the Shastras, but he is literally experiencing all that which the Shastra is saying. So more we will take up in next class. Anything today, if you want to ask, share, you are welcome.
It's amazing what, and this has happened only in the 19th century. It's not, I mean, it's